Part 67. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 694. Only members of the Immortal Crew Association have the power to transfer information in the general archives. However, in New Era 499, the Immortal Crew Association and the technology named Coffin of Immortality had not yet appeared. That year's tenet is absolutely impossible for the members of the 10-person decision-making seat to survive until now. All the members of the current Immortal Crew Club were born after the 499th year of the new era. Without exception, there are no members of the 10-person decision-making seat at that time. Even if there was some black history in that year, it probably wouldn't have much to do with the current members of the undead crew. Could it be said that these files had been transferred before the establishment of the Immortal Crew Association, or rather, destroyed? Kaylan squatted down and carefully checked the oxidation of the metal in the bolt holes, only to find that there were even brand new scratch marks in the bolt holes. That is to say, the cabinet frame that was originally placed here had been recently dismantled. It is difficult to judge the specific time, but it is basically certain that the files of the 499th year of the new era were transferred or destroyed within a year. A year ago, those files were most likely stored in this location, and any member of the undead crew could access them at will. Kaylan couldn't help but curse in his heart. It was clear that he was being targeted. The members of the Undead Crew Club deliberately concealed what happened in the 499th year of the new era from him. These secrets were not allowed to be known to Kaylan even after he joined the Undead Crew Club. What is the significance of the previous vote of the members of the Undead Crew? If it weren't for the fool's sudden corpse fraud, all the secrets of the crew would have been shared long ago, which would naturally include what happened in the 499th year of the new era and the reasons why the relevant files were transferred and destroyed. If these secrets cannot be kept to oneself, then wouldn't the purpose of this vote be contrary to that? If I asked those in the yes camp about this, would they tell me the truth? Kaylan was unsure, but he decided to give it a try. The 499th year of the new era, natural wormholes, time and space jumps. Just mentioning any of these keywords makes Kaylan a little nervous. The appeal of these disappeared files to him is almost more than that of the last member of the 776 Special Forces team. Mission accomplished. According to the official files that can be easily found on the internet, that year was the largest population decline in the history of the Ark interstellar voyage. Even the Alexander incident that just happened can only be ranked second, although the Ark was successful. It passed through the natural wormhole, but the damage to the hull took more than 100 years to be completely repaired. This was a real serious injury to the Vitality. If it were not for the survivors on the Ark who were lucky enough to survive on a nearby planet, several resource asteroids have been discovered in the domain, and Ark may not be able to reach the galaxy where Alpha Star is located. No one knows how the people on the Ark survived that period of time. Nearly 200 of the 260 grain warehouses on the Ark were destroyed, except for the year 499 of the new era, and in the decades after that, the population of Ark has been declining. Hunger, disease, armed conflicts, and repression have claimed countless lives. The population of Ark once dropped to about 1/10 of what it was before the time and space jump. The human race has been completely extinct several times. The Edge struggled back and forth. The damaged parts of the Ark were only repaired more than 600 years ago in the new era, and the population level did not barely recover to the level before the time and space jump until the 700 or 800 years in the new era. The Prophet also told Kaylan, the beta clones had been successfully developed in the year 750 of the new era, but at that time it was a period of high incidence of riots on the ship. People in the Undead Crew Association were worried that the release of this technology would cause irritation. More people's emotions had the effect of adding fuel to the fire. As a result, this technology was sealed as a taboo, and the scientists involved in the project also signed the strictest gag orders. Population growth is slow, so it is necessary to develop technologies such as asexual reproduction, cloning and human duplication, food shortages, resource scarcity, and management chaos lead to increasing public dissatisfaction, which in turn triggers protests and riots. All of these clues are correct. That is to say, at least most of what the prophet said is true. Others in the undead crew did not deny the existence of beta clones. But when Kaylan asked him, they all remained silent. Although Kaylan has become a member of the Immortal Crew Association, he cannot force other members to reveal this information to him, unless the previous resolution can be voted on. If you want to know the truth, you have to investigate on your own. However, before the investigation even really started, the leads were dropped. Kaylan could only put aside what happened in the 499th year of the new era and continue to move forward. The 776 Special Forces team lost contact with ARC 49 years ago, in the 902nd year of the new era, during its last mission. Also missing with the entire team was Liao Zilang, a former SDU member who joined the 776 Special Forces team in the same year. Grandfather, Liao Xing. The outcome of the 776 Special Forces team was to be completely wiped out, as Kaylan had verified with his own eyes, except for Liao Xing. He still vividly remembers that scene, when he was leaning down to observe the abyss where the prehistoric species had been imprisoned. A black shadow quietly appeared behind him. He, or it had along the faces of Zhang and Liao Zilang were so similar that he did not pull the trigger at the first moment. Then, the black shadow suddenly stretched out his hand and pushed himself into the abyss. Through the information obtained by the Hound, it can be confirmed that the dark figure should be Liao Zilang's grandfather, Liao Xing at least. The face should belong to Liao Xing. Liao Zilang looks very much like his grandfather, which can be seen from the column of photos on the file. But why was Liao Xing the only one who survived while the rest of the 776 Special Forces team died? Did he really survive? One question after another flashed through Ian's head. The flow of time on that unnamed island is different from that in the outside world. Kaylan once stayed on the island for at least 1 day and 1 night, but from the perspective of everyone on the Pioneer icebreaker, he was only missing 4 only hours. Let's not consider this for the moment. Although the flow rate of time is different, the effect of time on things in the same space will not be much different. On that unknown island, the plastic gun the support will age and become brittle, the fiber fabric on the body will decompose, and the small iron parts on the equipment will also rust. If you ignore the phenomenon that there is no alternation of day and night, and there is no comparison with the outside time, Kaylan is completely unable to detect the time anomaly. If that was really Liao Xing, and the bodies of his teammates had turned into bones, why didn't his appearance age at all? Time seemed to have stopped flowing in his body, sealing him in the year when he lost contact with the outside world. Kaylan tried hard to recall those memory fragments. In his impression, the black figure was not wearing the combat uniform and equipment of the 776 Special Forces team, nor was he wearing a diving suit, but was wrapped in a somewhat tattered black robe. Except for the head, almost all parts of the body are completely covered by this robe. That dark shadow, is it really Liao Xing? Kaylan couldn't help but have such doubts. Could it be something else that just occupies Liao Xing's body, or is it simulating Liao Xing's appearance? There is a piece of meat in the glacier ruins that can perfectly replicate a human being, so there is something on the nameless island that can replicate the real Liao Xing and keep his original appearance for decades or even hundreds of years. Kaylan thinks it is entirely possible. First, eliminate the seeds of erosion. The physical quality of the container parasitized by the erosion seed will become extremely strong, and Kaylan clearly remembers that he pulled the trigger of the shotgun the moment he fell. Because his body lost balance, most of the shots were fired. All the projectiles hit the empty space, and only a few hit the black shadow, but even so, the black shadow staggered back a few steps. Its defense is not strong, at least much weaker than the seed of corrosion. What puzzled Kaylan the most was, why did it appear at that time and push him into the abyss? He didn't know whether it was because Kaylan was too tired at the time, which affected his condition, or whether the other party's movements were really silent. It wasn't until the black shadow was less than 20 centimeters away from Ian's back that Kaylan noticed something strange. In that case, if the other party wanted to kill Kaylan, Kaylan would have died countless times. Even if the opponent is not strong, it is too easy to sneak attack a person who has his back turned. However, the opponent did not do that and just watched him silently from behind Kaylan. It wasn't until Kaylan turned around and saw its face clearly that it stretched out its hand and pushed Kaylan off the cliff. Moreover, judging from the final result, it seemed to have saved Kaylan and allowed Kaylan to escape from the strange unknown island. If the only way to leave that place was to jump off the cliff, Kaylan, I'm afraid I will be trapped in that place for the rest of my life. But, if the other party pushed me down to save myself, then why didn't it jump into the abyss by itself? Is it because it can't leave that place, or it can't return to human society? There were so many doubts that Kaylan didn't know where to start for analysis. Ian's footsteps stopped, and the chaotic thoughts in his head also stopped. The inscription New Era 902 on the ground told him, "We have arrived." With a trace of expectation and a trace of nervousness, Ian's vision slowly came onto the stage, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. The files from New Era 902 have not been moved, and every cabinet shelf is fully placed. The name of the commander of the 776 Special Forces team is Ken. He once left an incomplete voice record in the black box. The earliest voice record was on July 11, 902, New Era. At that time, 776 the special team has been on that weird unnamed island for 4 days. With the Ark's transport capacity of that era, it was fully capable of launching a small-scale special force to any corner on the surface of Alpha Planet within 15 days. In other words, their departure time should be between the end of June and the beginning of July. Kaylan walked into the cabinet shelves, and soon he found the rows of cabinet shelves where the June files of New Era 902 were stored. His eyes swept across the rows on the cabinet shelves, and soon his attention was locked on an anti-magnetic box labeled Military Special Forces Mobilization File. In 902 of the New Era, Ark's army had not yet been divided into 3 major armies: Field Force, Garrison Force, and Air Force Fleet. The numbers and affiliations of each force were also relatively complicated and confusing. In addition, it was an era of frequent wars. In order for Ark to gain a firm foothold on Alpha Planet, the soldiers are fighting countless indigenous creatures almost every day. Every day, troops are wiped out in organized formations, and there are new numbers and new soldiers every day. Charge into the battle line. Just the anti-magnetic box where the Special Forces mobilization files were stored contained 21 hard drives. This is only the mobilization record of Special Forces. If regular troops were included, the number would probably be more than 10 times higher. Fortunately, I was prepared in advance. Kaylan sighed, sat down cross-legged on the cold metal floor, moved the bucket backpack behind him to the front of him, and opened the lid. What was in the backpack was a high-performance computer host. Kaylan used his laptop to connect to the host, and then spread out a 1-meter square folding metal plate aside. These metal plates are covered with hard drive interfaces, and 30 mechanical hard drives of this size can be connected at the same time. Kaylan inserted 21 hard drives into the interface and turned on the power. The disks in the hard drive began to rotate and made a slight buzzing sound. Although there are only 21 hard drives, the number of files stored in them is still an astronomical figure for the processing efficiency of the human brain. It is naturally impossible for Kaylan to read every file. He could only enter the 2 keywords 776 Special Forces Team and Liao Xing into the computer to search for files containing these 2 words. Even so, the number of documents found still reached 400. As one of the most elite special forces on the Ark at that time, in the month of June alone, the 776 Special Forces team was dispatched 17 times and participated in many battles with indigenous creatures. As for Liao Xing, who was transferred from STU to the 776 Special Forces team, he had outstanding achievements. If he had not been Mia during the last mission, he would have been transferred to the Special Operations Command the next year. Sort by time, reverse order. Kaylan moved the cursor and clicked on this option. Suddenly, the last mission received by the 776 Special Forces team was moved to the front position. P.S. Thanks to Long Yuan Su for the 5,000 book coins, thanks to Reading Giraffe for the 1,500 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 695. Kaylan held his breath and clicked on the document with excitement. Task number, Special A-902-6-133,517, Confidentiality Level, Highest. Mission Execution Unit, all members of the 776 Special Forces team, a total of 57 people from Commander Ken down. Equipment configuration, 55 sets of B-level standard field equipment, 2 Fearless Warrior reinforced armors, 1 Trial Engineering Mecha XTC-003, and 4 tactical grade small hydrogen bombs. Mission location, Engine Number 92 Wreckage Site. Transport Unit, the 7th Independent Army Aviation Group, 4 Yellow-class transport aircraft, numbers, Lucci-096, Lucci-097, Lucci-099, Lucci-106. Route arrangement, the Yellow-class transport aircraft will transport the Mission Execution Unit to a distance of 340 kilometers from the target location, and then the Mission Execution Unit will drive its own ground vehicle to the target location. Mission goal, destroy the wreckage of engine number 92 and erase all traces. Task start time, June 30th, 902nd of the new era. Task time limit, 168 hours. Task result, goal achieved. Task execution unit status, all M.I.A. After reading these dozen lines of text, Kaylan kept thinking one sentence, that's it? That's it? As a mission with the highest level of confidentiality, how could the mission files be so concise? This is absolutely unheard of. Even if a few bullets were lost at a certain post of the garrison, the number of words in the report document that needs to be submitted to the superiors would probably be a little longer than this. Although there are few clues, it is better than none at all. Kaylan was not consoling himself. At least, there was a lot of information contained in these short dozen lines of text. First of all, what caught Kaylan's eye the most was the mission location of the 776 Special Forces team, or in other words, the mission target. Engine number 92 Wreckage Site. From a literal point of view, this should be a technological artifact of the Alpha civilization. As for what kind of engine it is, Kaylan still doesn't know yet, but one thing is certain from the number. An engine wreckage site like this, there are at least 91 others. Is it some ruins? You chose such a name to deceive others, he murmured to himself. Class B standard field equipment and Fearless Warrior reinforced armor are comparable to what Kaylan discovered on the unnamed island. As for the Trial Engineering Mecha XTC-003, it should be used to transport and drop tactical grade a tool for small hydrogen bombs. Hydrogen bombs are different from atomic bombs. One is nuclear fission and the other is nuclear fusion. The energy released during the explosion is also very different. No matter how tactical or miniaturized the hydrogen bomb is, it will not be so powerful. Where to go? A military base the size of Mukok only needs a small hydrogen bomb to flatten all the buildings on the ground. As for the underground part, it depends on the thickness of the insulation layer and nuclear protection layer. And the 776 Special Forces team actually brought 4 such small hydrogen bombs at once. What exactly is this engine? Could it be the engine of another Yagunactor? However, if such a thing really exists, why not bring it back to the Ark for study instead of destroying it directly? Even if you can't bring it back, wouldn't it be enough to build a base on the spot and move the research department there? Is this what Ark does in the molten mine area? Moreover, Liao Xing and the others were not only required to blow up the remains of the engine, but were also required to erase all traces. This mission requirement was a bit intriguing. Is there anything shameful about that thing? At that time, heretical sects should not have appeared yet. In other words, on this planet, Ark's only enemies were the aggressive indigenous creatures and the harsh natural environment. They had no need to worry about some powerful alpha civilization. The creation is used by the enemy, and they have plenty of time to digest and absorb these technologies. But why don't they do this? And, even though the mission has been completed, why did all members of the 776 Special Forces team disappear in the end? Why did they appear on that strange unknown island? The soldiers of the 776 Special Forces team were not affected by the hydrogen bomb, and they did not suffer any losses in the process of completing their mission objectives. Judging from the remaining ammunition, they did not even suffer any losses before being sent to the unnamed island. What a battle! Judging from the clues they have now, the last mission they carried out does not seem to have any direct connection with the nameless island. Kaylan still remembers the process of arriving at the nameless island. When he fell into the liquid cliff and fell towards the dark seabed, a strong white light enveloped his whole body. When he woke up, he was already on the dark seabed, on the beach of the unnamed island. When leaving Wyoming Island, he also saw a similar white light. This special effect should be some kind of method similar to teleportation. As for the coma when he went to the island, it was purely because Kaylan was trapped by the water on the bottom of the sea. He will only faint if he is seriously injured due to the pressure. When he returned, he remained conscious throughout the whole process, but even so, the information he obtained was still pitiful, and it was not much different from fainting. The only thing the two have in common is probably falling. If I insist on adding one more thing, it can only be water. Falling, entering a body of water, leaving the water basically follows the sequence whether arriving or leaving. Is this how the 776 Special Forces team came to the unnamed island? The explosion of the hydrogen bomb created a large crater, and they fell over the edge of the crater? No, no, no. This is too far-fetched. It seems unreliable when I think about it. If they were at the edge of the pit, the shock wave generated by the explosion at this distance would be enough to completely destroy them, not even the scum would be left. There would be no chance for them to slip and fall. If we insist on a relatively reasonable explanation, then only the explosion caused the earthquake, the ground cracked, and the sudden crack swallowed them all. But that doesn't mean the whole team will fall into it, right? Judging from the level of the mission they performed, if someone fell into the crevice, the remaining team members would immediately record and report to ARC, and then wait for the professional rescue team to arrive, like the kind of person who jumps deep in order to save someone. The plot of Abyss is a plot that can only appear in brainless and sensational 50-cent film and television dramas. The members of the 776th Special Forces team are all professional soldiers with extremely high professional qualities. If they do this, it can only mean one thing: they are all crazy. But judging from the records of the black box, at least the commander still maintains some sense of sanity, otherwise what Kaylan would have heard were strange and meaningless gibberings. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 696. Moreover, what flows at the bottom of cracks or craters formed by nuclear explosions cannot be water, but magma melted by high temperatures. The B-level standard field equipment equipped by the 776 Special Forces team is actually a set of multifunctional training uniforms and a series of accessories. It does not even have a powered exoskeleton, let alone high-standard heat-insulating protective gear or full coverage ones. Powered by armor, the person was dead the moment he fell into the lava. Even if he was teleported to the nameless island, all that was left was a pile of mixed ashes. Maybe, my thinking direction from the beginning was wrong? Falls, bodies of water, are these conditions just coincidence? But teleportation is definitely correct, and what are the hard conditions required for teleportation? A lot of energy. The explosion of a hydrogen bomb can release a large amount of energy. This energy can be used to activate a certain transmission device to transport more than 50 people and equipment to the unknown island. This is completely possible. Could it be that there is actually a usable transmission device inside the engine wreckage, and the hydrogen bomb set by the 776 Special Forces team just activated this transmission device and provided it with enough energy? Kaylan took a deep breath. He felt that he was finally getting closer to the truth. He closed the file, thought for a moment, then changed the keyword in the search box to engine wreckage and hit the enter key. The original search results of more than 400 immediately turned into 3, in addition to the records of the last mission of the 776 Special Forces team, there were 2 other Special Forces sent to perform the same mission. The contents of these 2 mission files are similar to the one of the 776 Special Forces team. Their targets are engine wreckage number 54 and engine wreckage number 79 respectively. The mission requirements were all to use hydrogen bombs to blow up the wreckage of these 2, or rather, these 2 engines and erase all traces of them. However, these 2 special forces were not fully M.I. like the 776 Special Forces team. After completing their mission, they returned to the Ark. The only few casualties were caused by encountering a swarm of indigenous creatures during the march. Judging from these 2 mission files, the task of destroying the engine wreckage does not seem to be dangerous at all. Strange, why were these 2 special forces not teleported to the nameless island? Only the 776 Special Forces team is an exception? Is it because of luck? Kaylan pondered for a while, then stood up and ran to the back. New Era 902. After June, all the corresponding hard drives were found in several rows of cabinets. Copy the files, then remove the hard drive and replace it with a new one. Then, he entered the numbers and personnel lists of the 2 special forces into the search box. After completing this mission, the ranks of all members of these 2 troops were basically promoted. However, in less than a month, they were sent to battlefields with extremely harsh fighting conditions, and were assigned to almost a hellish mission. These 2 special forces were wiped out one after another. Judging from the relevant files, it looks more like they were murdered. An elite force was airdropped directly behind a cluster of hundreds of thousands of indigenous creatures and attacked the leading individual in the cluster. To contain the movements of the entire cluster, such a task is indeed very important, and it is true that only special forces can complete it, but from Ian's perspective, this behavior is more like the Ark's senior management is silencing them. A very reasonable and wasteless means of silence. Make the best use of everything. For some reason, these 4 words suddenly popped into his head. The clues were completely broken. Kaylan curled his lips helplessly. The day after the 2 troops returned to the Ark, they were sent to a remote military base in the name of participating in concentrated special training. After staying in the base for a month, he went to the front line. During the whole process, he had almost no contact with outside personnel, let alone leaked anything related to the mission content. From the perspective of the soldiers themselves, or the commanders of the troops, or the ordinary people of Ark, there may be no connection between these things. After all, the war in that era was almost daily, and many troops were basically spinning. After a battle, there was no one. 3 to 5 days of rest is good. More often than not, they have just returned from the front line, and after replenishing personnel and supplies, they will immediately go to the next battlefield. The training time in the recruit camp is shortened to a minimum of 30 hours, and then they are incorporated into these units. Among them, as long as the new recruits can survive the brutal battle, they will soon become experienced veterans. A month of concentrated special training was simply an extremely luxurious treatment given the circumstances at that time. But Kaylan is not a person in the game. He is now in a god's perspective. Nearly half a century has passed since that era, but the smell of conspiracy has not dissipated at all. If the 776 Special Forces team had not disappeared, they would probably have faced the same fate. What exactly is this engine wreckage? Why would the undead crew destroy them? Do you even want to silence all the soldiers who are performing the mission? The answers to these things may be hidden in the files before the 902nd year of the new era, but Kaylan only knows this one keyword. Finding the truth in so many files is as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Although he had obtained the highest level of authority, he still could not find the answer. Not because the answer doesn't exist, but because the answer is hidden too deep. The only way is to connect all the hard drives in the general archives to the core master brain of ARC, and use the powerful computing power of the core master brain to conduct screening, and then it is possible to find those clues, but this matter has obviously exceeded one person. The scope of power of the members of the Immortal Crew Association can only be implemented through a vote of all members. Kaylan knew very well that it was absolutely impossible for this resolution to be passed. "You seem to be in trouble," a beautiful female voice sounded not far away. Kaylan raised his head and saw a face that could only be described as perfect. The Immortal Crew, Seat 6, Lover, Afterota. When Kaylan officially joined the undead crew, her projection was sitting on Ian's right-hand side. The body in front of him is obviously a biochemical mechanical body similar to Demeter, but compared to the projection, the face after materialization is obviously more moving. PS To be honest, the recent subscription performance is not ideal. I don't know whether it is because of problems in the plot or other reasons. The plummeting data is really frustrating. After thinking about it, I decided to divide the daily update into 2 chapters. Well, at least I can support the data. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 697. Among the women Kaylan had seen, only the inhuman creature Zi-Logo could compete with her in terms of appearance. But the essence of the two is different. Zi-Logo's appearance will be fine-tuned according to Ian's preference for the opposite sex deep in his brain. The appearance he presents may not be the most beautiful, but it must be Ian's favorite, and the one in front of him is this one. She represents the purest beauty. Afterota, that's what I should call you, right? Yes, Chiron. The other party nodded slightly. My name is Kaylan. Kaylan couldn't help but frown. The name Chiron always reminded him of the giant mountain of flesh that rotted and withered and gradually died on the sick village space station. The name is just a code name. When you inherit Chiron's seat, you also inherit the code name, Afterota said. Then can I understand, the members of the Immortal Crew Club have actually been rotated several times. Ian's heart moved. You, or some of you, are not the first to use these code names. People. Yes, Afterota admitted readily. That's why there is an information gap between members of the Immortal Crew Association. The later you join, the less you know, and I know almost nothing. Kaylan shrugged. Even if the general file is the library was just in front of me, and it was hard for me to find what I wanted. Kaylan didn't think that the extremely beautiful member of the Immortal Crew Club in front of her would help her, although she voted in favor of her joining the crew club. On the resolution of sharing intelligence, she was a member of the opposition. For Kaylan, Demeter, and others, she is a person from the opposite camp. Judging from the results of Ian's analysis, the opposition must know more secrets than those who support intelligence sharing, and they have been members of the undead crew for a longer time. If that resolution is not passed, the information gap between the two camps will never be eliminated. "Why are you here?" Kaylan asked. "You're not here to mock me, are you?" "No, I'm here to help you." Afterota's answer was somewhat beyond Ian's expectations. "What did you say?" "You can ask the core mastermind. I think it might be able to tell you," part of the answer Afterota said eloquently. "The core mastermind of ARC is here," Kaylan said in shock. As the body of ARC's highest-level intelligent control system and the most sophisticated supercomputer in human history, the specific location of ARC's core mastermind has always been a mystery. No one except members of the undead crew knows about the supercomputer. "Where is it hidden?" "Not far," said Aftalota. This answer was within Ian's expectation. Blackwell is located at the junction of the North District 1 and the Central Core area. No matter how well the core mastermind is hidden, it will definitely be located within the Central Core area, in terms of physical distance. Said, "It is indeed not far. I can take you there." Afterota added, "The engine room of the core mastermind requires at least 2 members of the undead crew to enter together. You cannot enter alone." "Okay, thank you." Kaylan nodded to her. Although he really wanted to ask Aphrodite why she wanted to help him, now was obviously not the best time to ask. The other party's purpose and motivation were still unclear, and all Kaylan could do was wait and see. Under the leadership of Aphrodite, the two passed through countless cabinet shelves with anti-magnetic boxes and walked to a high wall that could not be seen to the top. Along the way, Kaylan silently counted his steps, a total of 24,450 steps, and his body, which was strengthened by the living armor to the point where it was almost the apex of a human being, could accurately count each step. It is controlled at 0.5 meters. If you use the number of steps to measure the depth of the general archives, it will be almost more than 12,000 meters. Although he didn't know when this kind of data would come in handy, Kaylan silently kept it in mind. "Behind this wall is the computer room of the core mastermind," Aphrodite said. Her voice is very nice, and it doesn't have the innate majesty and indifference like most members of the undead crew. Instead, it has an ethereal girlish voice, like a harp, and can't help but be reminiscent of the unique crisp sound of raindrops falling into a jade plate. Although this is just a bionic made of machinery and bionic materials, and although Kaylan has not yet figured out whether the other person is an enemy or a friend, one thing he has to admit is that he and the 6th member of the crew association getting along can make people feel happy and comfortable instinctively. Kaylan subconsciously took a deep breath. He realized dangerously that he had almost been fascinated by this woman just now. "This is not normal at all. I can even resist Ze Logo's temptation, so there is no reason why I would be fascinated by a cyborg. Could it be that the other party secretly used some small tricks that he didn't know about? If this is the case, what is her purpose? Honey trap? Want to pull yourself into their camp?" Kaylan quickly thought about the eldest lady in her family, trying to squeeze Afterota's perfect face out of her mind. At the same time, dozens of kilometers away, Zofia Soma, who was processing documents on the top floor of the Silver Building, felt her nose itching for no reason, and she subconsciously sneezed. "Miss, are you okay?" Caroline, who is the chief assistant and temporary security director of the Silver Building, immediately asked nervously, "Is it possible that you caught a cold? Do you need me to call the medical staff over?" "No. It's okay." Zofia waved her hand, "It's just that my nose was a little itchy just now. The air conditioner is turned on at 25 degrees. Your eldest lady is still wearing a suit jacket and trousers. How could she catch a cold?" The hound behind the table on the other side raised his head and said with a smile, "According to me, it's probably that little bastard Lan is missing you." Laugo originally wanted to say, "It's probably that little bastard Lan who is thinking about the eldest lady's body," but fortunately, he just changed the second half of the sentence as soon as he said it. He should be busy with more important things now. When she thought of Lan, Zofia's fair face couldn't help but turn a bright red color. just before Kaylan left Bian building and went to Heijing, the two also had an in-depth communication in Sophia's car. That guy went to check some things. Hound smacked his lips and hesitated for a moment before continuing, some things that only members of the crew have the authority to check. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 698. At the bottom of the Black Well, the main archives. Entrance to the Arc Core Master Brain Computer Room. Aphrodite rolled up her gauze-textured sleeves, revealing a fair and smooth forearm. She put her forearm close to the wall in front of her. Within half a second, the wall seemed to sense something and opened a gap. Aphrodite took a step forward and inserted her forearm into the gap. At this time, Kaylan was standing behind her. With his height advantage, he could clearly see the changes in Aphrodite's forearm after it reached into the wall. The fake bionic skin on the arm was lifted up, revealing the precise structure hidden underneath. The metal skeleton and mechanical joints are wrapped in simulated fat and muscles that have a buffering and protective effect. Slender hydraulic tubes that replace blood vessels are embedded in the hollow metal tubes and contract and relax regularly with the rhythm of breathing. If that guy Layton had seen the structure of this arm, this machine guy would probably become a bogey on the spot. More than a dozen metal probes stretched out from the cracks in the cracked wall. They paused in mid-air for a moment and then stabbed into Aphrodite's forearm. Her body trembled violently as if she was electrocuted, but soon the probes retracted into the wall. A semicircular mark lit up in the center of the wall. "It's your turn." Aphrodite turned around and said to Kaylan, "The passage to the Core Master Computer Room must be opened by 2 members of the undead crew." Kaylan glanced at the arm she had just extended into the wall. The bionic skin had been lifted up and covered back, and the edge of the incision had almost healed, leaving only a faint pink mark. "But, my body doesn't have this function," Kaylan said. "Same, you just have to extend your arm." "Really?" Kaylan raised his arm suspiciously, imitating Aphrodite's behavior just now, and approached the wall. As expected, the wall sensed him and opened a crack. Kaylan gritted his teeth and stretched his arm in. Anyway, his recovery ability is so abnormal that even if his entire arm is cut off, a new one will grow back in just a few days. But this time, what protruded from the wall was not a probe, but a slender blood-drawing needle. After drawing a small amount of Ian's blood, it retracted into the wall again. The other semicircular mark also lit up. The wall separated from it, and a passage that could accommodate 2 people walking side by side appeared in front of Kaylan. "Let's go." Aphrodite took the lead and walked forward, while Kaylan followed closely behind her. The passage is not too long, only about 50 meters, but the entire passage is located within the wall. In other words, the outer wall of this computer room is also fully 50 meters thick. Even without additional protective devices such as energy shields, the wall itself can withstand the next direct shot from the main gun of the U-class heavy cruiser. The temperature in the computer room is very low, only about 5 degrees Celsius. Although it is a bit cold for living things, it is an excellent ambient temperature for precision electronic equipment. It's just that, this thing that appeared in Ian's field of vision, can it really be regarded as a pure electronic device? Located in the center of the computer room is a glass jar with a diameter of more than 100 meters. The glass jar is filled with a light yellow clear liquid that seems to be LCL. A huge head is soaked in it and suspended in the middle of the glass jar. "Is this the core mastermind of ARC?" Kaylan murmured. "It's really a brain." If calculated according to the proportion of a human head, this giant head has been magnified at least 1,000 times. From the metal parts leaking from the gaps in the flesh and blood, it can be seen that the basic structure of this head, that is, the body of the supercomputer, should still be made of. It is a non-living body made of metal and polymer, but on the surface of the non-living body, a layer of flesh and blood tissue like tattered cotton wool grows, wrapping the entire body of the supercomputer. Perhaps it had been soaked in the liquid for too long, and the flesh and blood showed a pale and swollen state, just like a corpse that had been dead for many days, but Kaylan was absolutely sure, it was alive. These pale, swollen, torn cotton-like flesh and blood formed a fragmented human face, and vague facial features could be vaguely discerned. Kaylan compared this somewhat horrifying face with the virtual projections of all members of the undead crew. I found that there was no one with a similar appearance. Of course, it is not ruled out that the face in front of him is too severely deformed. If the flesh and blood can become the same as the simulated skin on Aftero beside him, maybe Kaylan will see a completely different face. Countless thick pipes and cables connect this head. Among these pipes and cables, some are connected to electronic devices under the flesh and blood, and some directly penetrate into the flesh and blood. Kaylan can even I could vaguely see the liquid pumped out of the tube spreading along the fibrous structure inside the flesh and blood, and then being absorbed. Kaylan did not see the parietal bone at the top of the skull. Soft tissue that was almost identical to the human brain was placed in a reserved metal container. On this mass of brain tissue, there were countless with the electrode patch. Along with the output of current, the brain tissue will twitch slightly from time to time. The twitches in many places come together, and it looks like the brain tissue is constantly squirming. The scene is extremely serve the meal. Yes, this is the core mastermind of Ark, Afterota replied, the highest achievement of human computer technology. Is it a living thing, or a machine? It is both a living thing and a machine. Aphrodite raised her head slightly and stared at the head in the glass jar. The core master brain has undergone 3 major upgrades, and the second upgrade is to implant biological tissue into it. The matrix allows it to grow and integrate with the computer. Relying on the efficient processing of bioelectrical signals by the biological brain, the upgraded core master brain's computing power has been fully doubled. Then does it have self-awareness? Kaylan couldn't help but ask. I mean, real artificial intelligence, not those artificial retarded people outside. Of course, there is. P.S. Thanks to Sweet Sweets for the 700 starting coins, thanks to STDC for the 100 starting coins. The prototype of the core mastermind of PPS was inspired by the comic work Blame, created by Tsutomu. The central AI of East Asia Heavy Industries. In addition, I found that in the spiritual cage, the biological computer of the air prison seems to have similar settings. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 699. As soon as the words fell, the core mastermind, which was originally in a sleeping state, slowly opened its eyes. They were 2 huge, turbid, and terrifying eyeballs. The gray-white pupils were like the eyes of patients with severe cataracts. The 2 eyeballs slowly rotated a few times, and then focused on Ian's body. Although the blazing white pupils had no sense of focus at all, Kaylan could still feel the solid gaze. The head was staring at him, and an inexplicable sense of tension made all the muscles of Ian's body tremble. I couldn't help but get tense. Are you nervous? Afterota noticed Ian's change and asked. It's sheer nonsense to say you're not nervous when you're stared at by a human head that's 1,000 times the normal size, Kaylan said. I thought that as a relic hunter, you should have seen similar things, Afterota said. Don't those senior relic hunters behave very well when facing danger or powerful enemies? Are you calm? Psychological tension and physical tension are 2 different things. Kaylan shook his head. In other words, they are the complete opposite. The stronger the relic hunter, the faster his body will enter a state of tension when facing sudden dangers. The faster. This is a kind of survival instinct of human beings as a living organism, which has evolved in an environment of survival of the fittest for tens of thousands of years. The body under tension has a faster reaction speed and stronger explosive power. As for that, the nervousness of a blank mind and inoperable hands and feet can be fatal to a ruin hunter. Kaylan paused and then added, if I met such a guy while on a mission, I would only advise him to change his profession, even if it is to go into a factory to tighten screws. It would be better than losing his life in the ruins. At this moment, the core mastermind spoke. Welcome, the fifth seat of the crew is His Excellency the Pope Chiron, and the sixth seat is His Excellency the Lover Afterota. This voice is exactly the mechanical female voice that led Kaylan into the dark well and was complained about retroism by Kaylan. You can directly ask the core mastermind. Except for those things that require a vote by the entire crew to be unblocked, the core mastermind will answer all questions, Aphrodite said to Kaylan. Kaylan immediately wanted to ask why all the files in the 499th year had disappeared, but thinking about it, this matter must be one of those secrets that requires a vote by the entire crew to decide whether to unblock it. Asking was equivalent to asking in vain. It's better to focus on your purpose in the first place. I want to know the detailed information about the last mission of the 776th Special Forces team. The more detailed the better, Kaylan said. It is the one numbered Special A-902-6-133,517. The goal is to destroy the wreckage of the number 92 engine. Mission. If you need detailed information about this task, you can choose to experience the process of the task yourself, the core mastermind said slowly. Experience it on your own? How to experience it? Xiaomeng, a word that was both familiar and unfamiliar to Kaylan, came out of the core mastermind's mouth. Mutuo, what is it? An image of a purple-pink artificial creature popped up in Ian's head subconsciously. As a senior gamer, Kaylan, the super-powered Pokemon with the number 150 in the illustrated book, couldn't help but wonder. You may not know, but it is obvious that the Mutuo in his impression and the Mutuo in the core mastermind's mouth are not the same concept at all. Among the members of the 776 Special Forces team performing the mission, there is a beta-type replicant. His brain is implanted with an empathy chip directly controlled by the core master brain. This empathy chip can transform the body of this beta-type clone. All information collected by the senses is summarized and sent to the core mastermind. The Mutuo program can restore and materialize this information, allowing the experiencer to re-experience the task process from the first perspective of the chip implanter. Diro Te explained to Kaylan, I think if you want to get enough clues, no text, sound, or image data can match the level of detail of the information in Super Dream. After all, the recorded files, there may be omissions, but the sight seen with the eyes of those who have experienced it will not. What she said is right. Even if some details are ignored by those who have experienced them, the experiencers can still learn these things when they watch the Mutuo video for the second, third, or even more times. Find out. Moreover, in terms of realism alone, the first-person perspective of those who experienced it cannot be compared to dry text files. Okay, but how do you want to experience this thing? Kaylan asked. Please take a seat, the core mastermind said. Almost at the same time that the core mastermind said these two words, the floor behind Kaylan moved to both sides, and a seat with a metal base and a thick layer of meat carpet on the surface emerged from the seat. The earth rose up. Kaylan immediately recognized that the seat was a replica of the driver's seat of the blasphemer Mecha, but he was not that surprised. After all, it could be seen from those mass-produced fallen angels that the blasphemy, the technology of the gods Mecha, has been completely digested by Ark. In fact, having said that, the virtual trial that Kaylan accepted in the bottomless sinkhole was essentially the same as the Mutuo experience. It seems that this system is based on the neural connection technology and scene virtualization of the blasphemer Mecha. Developed based on technology. There may be some pain during the connection process. If you need the assistance of painkillers, please ask in advance, the core master said in an emotionless tone. However, the use of painkillers may cause a certain degree of distortion in the Mutuo scene. In the most serious case, the connection may be interrupted, so please use your own discretion. No need for painkillers, Kaylan said, then took off his jacket and shirt, and sat on the squirming seat. It was almost the same feeling as when he boarded the blasphemer mecha. Countless tiny fleshy tentacles pierced his skin and muscles, reaching deep into the gaps in his spine and connecting with the nerves in his spinal cord. Accompanied by a feeling of paralysis like an electric shock, Ian's vision suddenly fell into darkness. P.S. Thanks to Pure White Eyeball for the reward of 2,900 starting coins, thank you to Lonely Suburbs for the reward of 1,500 starting coins. PPS. The prototype of Mutuo comes from Cyberpunk 2077, which was very popular 2 years ago. To be honest, although the reputation of this game collapsed immediately after its release, I think the Mutuo settings in it are still very impressive, stunning. It does have a cyberpunk flavor, and it feels like an upgraded version of the Demon Hunter's senses in The Witcher 3 Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 700. Before the darkness in front of Ian's eyes dissipated, the sound of hunting wind came to his ears. No, that was not the sound of wind, but the sound of the propellers on the wingtips of the transport plane turning. Collins, it's time to board the plane. What are you doing standing around here? Kaylan felt his shoulder being tapped heavily from behind, and his vision suddenly brightened. The first thing that caught his eye was the door of the transport plane, which was very close at hand, and the black sergeant squatting at the door, extending a hand to him. Collins, come up quickly. Our time is very tight. If you are in a hurry to pee, just do it in your pants, the black sergeant said loudly to Kaylan. His teeth were dazzlingly white against his skin color. Kaylan, who had checked the information of all members of the 776 Special Forces team, instantly recognized the identity of the black sergeant. He was the commander of the 776 Special Forces team, 2nd Sergeant Major Ken. Having served for more than 20 years, he can definitely be regarded as a veteran among veterans. Likewise, he is also the recorder of the black box. Kaylan, who is in the super dream state, is just a bystander from the first perspective. He has no ability to manipulate this character. Everything will only proceed according to the original plot. He only sees himself reaching out. He held out a hand and was pulled into the cabin by Ken. From the words of Ken and his teammates behind him, Kaylan already knew the perspective of the person he was observing, Staff Sergeant Wood Collins, who was seconded to the 776 Special Forces from the 1st Reconnaissance Team of the 3rd Armored Mixed Brigade just 2 months ago. In the squad, the position held by the team is the Scout and 2nd Assaulter. Coincidentally, one of the remains that Kaylan found on the unnamed island belonged to Staff Sergeant Wood Collins, but he never expected that the Staff Sergeant was actually a beta-type clone. Kaylan had carefully examined the remains of Wood Collins on the unnamed island, but the difference between beta-type replicants and naturally born humans only existed in mitochondria and gene sequences. These things were determined by naked eyes and the most basic anatomy. The method cannot be seen at all. As for the empathy chip implanted in Collins' brain, it is a precision component with a diameter of only a few microns. Unless Kaylan can use a microscope to screen the intracranial tissue of the remains, it is impossible to discover this. Something. Glancing at the AUG S900 assault rifle held by Collins in his arms, if the wear grade of the gun Kaylan saw on the unnamed island was battle-scarred, then the Chowmeng image, now the gun I-1, should be considered factory brand new. Thinking back to everything he saw on the unknown island, especially the skeletons where Kaylan had found identification documents, and then looked at the soldiers talking and laughing in the cabin now, comparing their voices and smiles with those dog tags. After comparing the names one by one, Kaylan couldn't help but have a strange illusion of going back in time. Everyone, I am 2nd Lieutenant Elvis Walcott, the captain of this flight. This wild deer transport aircraft is a no-smoking area designated by ARC regulations. Please do not smoke. In addition, I participated in this afternoon mission operation. Passengers can accumulate 100 mileage points in our 7th Independent Army Aviation Group. Oh, by the way, the vomit bag is hung under the seat back of the front seat. Please take it by yourself, if necessary sit down. While adjusting various devices on the instrument panel, the pilot in the driver's seat turned sideways and said to the members of the 776 Special Forces team in a teasing tone, "Ignore this idiot, he is the Black Hawk helicopter pilot in the COS movie Black Hawk Down." The person sitting in the co-pilot smiled and cursed, and gave his partner the middle finger. "Tisk, I've seen that movie. I hope your wild deer class won't fall from the sky." A man was carrying a general-purpose machine gun, and the helmet slot was filled with communicators, night vision devices, etc. The soldier who piled up equipment complained. "This man's name is Connolly, the fireman of the 776th Special Forces team. His skeleton is located in the cave of Wyoming Island, and it almost shocked Kaylan. The cause of this person's death should be that after being infected by the corrosive seed, the corrosive seed parasitic in the body burst out of his chest. As for why this corrosive seed gave up its container, Kaylan didn't know." "Huh? If you want to shoot down my wild deer, unless those beasts running on the ground can take out hundreds of RPG rocket launchers," Second Lieutenant Walcott said very confidently. "Oh, antiques like RPG may not be if you can't catch up with a wild deer. I think you'd have to at least use a javelin." The javelin he refers to is an individual short-range anti-aircraft missile from the old era. In that era, the weapons and equipment of most armies were not much different from those 900 years ago. "It's best this way." Sergeant Ken pulled the last member of the 776 Special Forces team into the cabin, turned to Walcott and said in a deep voice. Walcott immediately shut up. Although he is a second lieutenant, his military rank is several levels higher than that of Sergeant Ken, who is a soldier. The value of a second-class sergeant major cannot be represented by military rank. All soldiers who can become a sergeant major must have served for 20 years. For elite veterans who are over 20 years old, various medals are enough to cover half of their chests. It is no exaggeration to say that a second-level sergeant major like Ken is a god-level figure in any army. He is a well-deserved king of soldiers. Even if the general comes, he has to be given some face. As for the salary and benefits of the second sergeant major, it is directly in line with the deputy regimental level. Not to mention the second lieutenant, even the major cannot compare. "Have you finished checking all the things that need to be checked?" Sergeant Ken walked behind the driver's seat, supported the back of the seat with one hand, and asked. "Everything has been checked and you can take off at any time." Walcott nodded obediently. "I'm just waiting for the soldiers under your command." "My people won't have any problems," Sergeant Ken interrupted. "Take off." 4 yellow-class transport planes rose into the air one after another. Only then did Kaylan see the scene below clearly through the porthole window. The airport was not on the Ark, but inside a military base built on the plain, not far away from the Ark. In the distance, through the clouds, you can still vaguely see the outline of the high-rise Ark building on the horizon. The 4 aircraft were in a Trinity escort formation. 3 yellow-class transport aircraft carrying the 776 Special Forces team were guarding the yellow in the middle. On this aircraft, the XTC was installed. -003 prototype engineering mecha and 4 small tactical-grade hydrogen bombs. They were guarded by 2 fully armed fearless warriors. "The weather is good," a soldier with a yellow face and a Japanese accent said. His name is Moriyama. He is a communications soldier and electronic engineer in the team, and his weapons are a Mk14 Eber semi-automatic rifle and a P90 improved submachine guns. Although they are all antique weapons from the old era, are more practical and reliable. Kaylan remembers clearly that in the black box recording, Sergeant Ken mentioned the death of Corporal Moriyama. On the unknown island, his lungs were pierced by a tentacle of the corrosion seed. P.S. Thanks to Yang Yu for the 100 book coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 701. Chapter 667 Beta Replicant Collins. In addition to Connolly and Moriyama, there are also Kino, Gary, Martin, Samuel, Joseph, and Danny. These are all names mentioned by Sergeant Ken in the black box recording, and these people who mentioned names, basically, they have been confirmed missing and dead. Samuel was a fearless warrior, and he was on the transport plane in the middle carrying engineering meches and hydrogen bombs. Apart from him, several other people were on this plane. As for Liao Xing, Kailan looked around at the soldiers in the cabin and didn't see that familiar face. He is not on this transport plane. At this moment, Connolly said, "Boss, we are already on the plane. Is it time to tell us the goal of this operation?" "Yes, yes," Joseph also added, "although I have roughly guessed the content of the mission. The hydrogen bomb must be to blow up the nest of an indigenous creature somewhere, but this kind of mission only requires the Army Aviation Corps. Can you complete it independently? No need to mobilize so many troops, right?" "Damn it, is the target of the explosion deep underground?" Connolly shouted with a depressed look on his face. "So our mission is to take the hydrogen bomb underground to detonate it? Damn, this mission, listen, it seems like it's a one-way ticket up there. I will tell you the details of the mission when they arrive." Sergeant Ken placed the butt of his gun on the floor of the cabin, leaned back on the seat, closed his eyes and rested. "By the way, Captain Walcott, you should know the destination of this flight, right?" Connolly turned to the transport plane pilot. "I know, but it's useless." Walcott shrugged. "We won't send you directly to the mission location. You need to drive the last part of the journey. As for your final destination, I don't know either." "Okay, Walcott." Sergeant Ken opened his eyes and glared at him. "The recording equipment on the plane is still working. If you don't want to be punished afterwards, just shut your mouth." "Oh," Walcott responded obediently. "You actually have to drive there?" Connolly smacked his lips. "I hate taking the land route." "Me too," Joseph nodded. On the Alpha Star map of this era, most of the plots are red danger areas and gray unexplored areas. The probability of encountering indigenous creatures when traveling overland is almost 100%, although the combat effectiveness of the 776 Special Forces team is very strong. But once the battle cannot be resolved quickly, the sound of the battle will attract other indigenous creatures in the surrounding area. If they are surrounded, without air rescue, it is only a matter of time before the entire army is annihilated. I don't know why, although Sergeant Ken didn't let Walcott speak, he was unusually tolerant of the discussions of the soldiers under his command, but the more he did this, the more nervous the soldiers became. Sergeant Ken is not a very talkative leader. On the contrary, his severity ranks among the top 3 among the commanders of several special forces. This is just like when you were a child. Your parents always like to scold you, dislike you, and even have a mixed doubles game. But suddenly one day when you come home from school, you find your parents waiting for you at the door with a smile in their hands. You are also carrying your favorite snacks and toys. As long as the child does not have a big IQ flaw, most of the time he will feel strange rather than surprised. If something goes wrong, there must be a monster, and Sergeant Ken's current performance has convinced these soldiers that this is a mission with no return. "Collins, Collins." The soldier sitting next to Kailan whispered Collins' name and gently poked Kailan with his elbow. "Ah, what's wrong, Martin?" "I was a little distracted just now." Kailan, or rather, Collins was stunned for a moment and turned his head. Sitting next to him was a young blond boy with a face full of freckles. Just looking at his face and body shape, one might even wonder whether this guy was an adult, but Kailan knew that this guy named Martin, he is very strong, and his total score in comprehensive training events ranks among the top 2 in the company all year round. As for the other one in the top 2, it's Collins himself. Collins and Martin were transferred to the 776th Special Forces team from the 1st Reconnaissance Company of the 3rd Armored Mixed Brigade together. Collins was the captain of the 1st team of the 1st Reconnaissance Company, while Martin was the captain of the 2nd team. We have known each other for several years before joining the 776 Special Forces team. Among the 776 Special Forces team, Martin and Collins also have the best relationship. Have you finished writing your suicide note? Martin's face looked a little ugly. I thought this mission shouldn't be difficult, so I didn't write it. Why are you writing that? How unlucky. Collins rolled his eyes at him and said. As a beta-type replicant, Collins naturally has no parents, not intended as an insult, and the false identity arc set for him is that of a test tube baby born from the public human breeding center, in a sense. It is actually true that beta-type clone embryos also mature in artificial wombs, but compared with those normally developing infants and young children, when they first open their eyes, they are already 16-20-year-old teenager. Collins has no family, also not intended to be insulting, he is not married, has no wife or children, and his only girlfriend ran away with a wealthy man of unknown generation a year ago. When he received the breakup message from his girlfriend, Collins had just retreated from a battlefield with a survival rate of less than 30%, and the next day he killed more than 140 mutated creatures by himself, earning a profit. Won a Silver Star medal, but for that rich man, for who knows how many generations, the Silver Star medal is actually no different from scrap metal. Collins' ex-girlfriend showed off her new boyfriend's medal on her social account, although this young man, who had been drained by alcohol and sex, had only served as a gold-plated technical sergeant in the garrison for 2 years. The quantity and quality of the medals he had received were enough to hang Collins up and beat him. As for the origin of these medals, there is actually nothing that cannot be said. Heroic killing of enemies on the battlefield is a contribution, and donating huge sums of money and military supplies to the military in one's own name is also a contribution. The only thing that gave Collins some comfort was that less than 2 months after the woman abandoned him, she was tired of being played by the rich man for countless generations. When she came to Collins with an obviously bulging belly, when the incident happened, Collins simply turned around and left. After that, Collins never saved any money or wrote a suicide note. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 702. Martin was still talking about the suicide note. He was different from Collins. He had a complete family and a beautiful sister, but this guy had one thing like Collins. He never can't save money. The so-called suicide note is nothing more than leaving a thought to the family. Kaylan, who was in Collins' perspective, couldn't help but sigh. As a person 50 years later, he naturally knew that everyone on this plane except the 2 pilots could not go back, but in their hearts, it must be a bit of a fluke, right? This scout named Martin was the first person to discover the core of the corrosion seed on the unnamed island. He was also the first person to be parasitized by the corrosion seed and turned into a monster. Kaylan felt that maybe it would be better for his family to never know his true ending. If you treat it as missing, there will always be a glimmer of hope left in your heart. Kaylan has been paying attention to the scene outside the porthole, using the arc high-rise buildings in the distance as a reference. The transport aircraft formation should be flying in the southwest direction. This is basically consistent with Sergeant Ken's recording in the black box. This mission, the target location is in 2 completely different directions from Zonghai. Although Alpha Star is round, Kaylan thinks that they will not be able to complete more than half of the circle around Alpha Star, right? Because the content of the mission would not be known until the destination, the soldiers of the 776th Special Forces Squadron could only chat about the recent battle situation. Relying on small talk to relieve stress can be regarded as a very practical method. Collins and Martin chatted intermittently, but Kaylan noticed that he would be distracted from time to time. Often Martin had already reached the 3rd topic, but he was still responding to the content of the first topic. This is one of the side effects after the empathy chip inside Collins' brain turned on the recording function. It is specifically manifested as listlessness, absent-mindedness, mild memory confusion, and loss of 5 senses. It only takes a few hours to adapt to return to normal core. The mastermind's mechanical female voice sounded in Ian's ears. But the topics that can be talked about are limited. After everyone chatted for a while, silence returned in the cabin again. Compared to the battlefields that have nothing to do with them, the mission they are about to perform next is still more concerning. Speaking of which, boss, is it true that no information can be leaked? Connolly asked unwillingly. At least let us prepare in advance, right? Has your gun been grazed? Sergeant Ken asked in a deep voice. Past Connolly nodded. How many bullets did you bring? 2 boxes of 100-round bullet chains, and Joseph also brought 2 boxes with me, and 4 pistol magazines. Connolly was a little puzzled, but he answered honestly. Are your shoelaces tied? Of course, boss. Why are you asking these questions? Connolly asked, confused. This is the preparation you need to make, Sergeant Ken said seriously. Just treat it as the same combat mission as usual. Routine combat missions do not carry hydrogen bombs. Martin whispered to Collins. 6 hours later, the Wild Deer-class transport aircraft finally began to lower its altitude. We are about to arrive at the destination of this flight. Second Lieutenant Walcott said to everyone in the cabin. According to the mission requirements, I can only send you here. You need to walk the rest of the way by yourself. That's it. Good luck to you all. 4 Wild Deer-class transport aircraft hovered about 3 meters above the ground. Several armored off-road vehicles were lowered first, followed by the heavily armed soldiers of the 776 Special Forces Team. 4 small tactical-grade hydrogen bombs have been loaded onto the prototype engineering mecha, and 2 fearless warriors are guarding the mecha. This is a frozen tundra covered with thin frost. Although it is noon, the air temperature is still less than 5 degrees Celsius, and the gas exhaled by the soldiers quickly condenses into patches of white mist. The latitude of this place is not too low. This was Ian's first judgment. The transport plane flew southwest of the Ark, and the Ark's landing point was at the equator. In other words, their current location was in the southern hemisphere of Alpha Star. According to the departure time recorded in the file, it should be June 30, 902, New Era, which is exactly winter for the southern hemisphere. Based on this information, Kaylan roughly concluded that his current location was between 45 and 60 degrees south latitude. Although the locations that can be inferred from these data will fluctuate greatly based on changes in terrain, the approximate range will not be wrong. 45 degrees to 60 degrees south latitude. Are there any famous ruins in this range? Kaylan tried hard to search for relevant information in his mind, trying to pry out some clues. Of course there are ruins in this area, not only some, but many. There are more than a dozen ruins that Kaylan has consulted detailed information about, and has explored or plans to explore. As for the ruins that he has an impression of and can name and number, the number has exceeded 3 digits, but among these ruins, Kaylan couldn't find anything related to the engine wreckage. Also, since the 776th Special Forces Team has completed that mission, then this Engine 92 wreckage site should have been destroyed by the hydrogen bomb, and the remaining traces on the surface must have been erased. As a person living in New Era 950, it's normal for me in that era to not be able to find any clues related to it. After figuring out this joint, Kaylan immediately gave up on useless efforts and focused his attention on Colin's perspective. No matter what this Engine 92 wreckage site is, the 776 Special Forces Team will see it sooner or later. By then, all problems will naturally be solved. The soldiers boarded their respective vehicles according to the pre-divided tactical groups. As for the engineering mecha loaded with tactical hydrogen bombs, it was carried by a heavy trailer, because mecha technology was still limited at that time. It is immature, so the actual battery life of this engineering mecha is only a short 2 hours, and its movement speed is not comparable to conventional wheeled vehicles. It cannot be used directly to travel. Collins and Martin did not ride in the armored off-road vehicles, they were the scouts in the team. They were positioned at the front of both wings of the convoy in the marching formation. The vehicles they were equipped with were also the most flexible and fastest individual field reconnaissance vehicles. Car. This kind of car is equipped with an aerospace rocket thruster on the back of the butt, and can reach half the speed of sound at the fastest on flat land, that is, 612 km per hour. By this time, Colin's side effects caused by the empathy chip had almost disappeared. He checked his equipment and the condition of the reconnaissance vehicle one last time, and then started the engine. P.S. Thanks to Colossus for the 2,000 starting coins I tipped, thanks to Starlight Destruction for the 500 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 703. Moving direction, due south, everyone set off. Sergeant Ken's calm voice came from the earphones. The convoy suddenly started to move. At this time, no one was chatting in the team channel, only formulaic reports every 90 seconds were left. The terrain of this tundra is very flat, and there are no traces of indigenous creatures as far as the eye can see. However, the members of the 776 Special Forces team still dare not relax at all. Collins's AUG assault rifle has been loaded, and the butt of the gun is resting on his above the knee. You can raise the gun and shoot at any time. The thick shock-absorbing tires and the hard frozen soil continued to make harsh friction sounds. Collins focused all his attention on exploring the surrounding environment. As scouts, he and Martin were the pioneers, and their mission was to detect in advance and help the convoy behind to avoid the indigenous biomes wandering in the wilderness. The two reconnaissance vehicles maintained a distance of about 1,000 meters from the rear convoy. This was the maximum distance that the communication device carried by the team could ensure stable communication under strong interference. Not long after the reconnaissance vehicle drove out, Kaylan discovered a problem. The dashboard of this car has obviously been modified, except for a simple mechanical compass. All electronic devices that can be used to locate and record driving routes have been removed, including the odometer found in any car. All locked up. Note, although there are no man-made positioning satellites in Alpha Star's low Earth orbit and the GPS positioning system cannot be used, you can still roughly determine your location based on geomagnetic positioning, base station positioning, etc., of course, provided that the magnetic field is not disturbed or there is a transfer station established by ARC within the sensing range of the device. Obviously, this was done to prevent the soldiers participating in the mission from remembering the specific coordinates of the mission target. As for Kaylan murmured in his heart, the base of the wreckage of engine number 92, is it really so shady? He felt like he was watching a suspense movie. The more foreshadowing like this, the more curious he became. Mutuo can be skipped and fast-forwarded just like a normal video. If it weren't for the fear of missing some details, Kaylan would have enabled these two functions. He had plenty of time, so much so that he could even read the entire task process over and over many times. The convoy galloped on the frozen tundra for nearly 4 days without stopping for a break. Even eating and excretion problems were solved by soft liquid food and urine bags with their own straws. As for the drivers, they were rotated among the soldiers. Collins and Martin would switch duties with others every 8 hours and go to the off-road vehicles in the rear to rest for a while. It's time, change people. The two reconnaissance vehicles drew a big circle on the tundra and returned to the side of the convoy. Two soldiers who looked sleepy jumped out of the driver's seat and moved around, walking towards the convoy with his limbs hanging. An off-road vehicle in the convoy stopped. Collins and Martin looked at each other, and they could see the unconcealed fatigue in each other's eyes. Even though they were working on an 8-hour shift, this intensity of off-road driving was hard on people. The consumption of physical energy is also extremely terrifying. It is impossible to rest well in a bumpy car, let alone fully recover the energy consumed. At that time, augmented personnel were only a rarity in the military. None of the members of the 776 Special Forces team had undergone augmentation or modification surgery, and their physical fitness was only slightly stronger than that of ordinary soldiers. The two people jumped out of the car silently and walked towards the reconnaissance vehicle parked not far away. "I'm so tired. I feel like my waist is about to break, and my butt is so shocked that I can't feel it at all," the soldier who was replaced complained to Collins and Martin while rubbing his butt. "It's all the same," Martin shook his head with a grimace. "We can't sleep in the car at all. The boss doesn't allow us to use stimulating drugs to test fatigue. Probably because we are afraid that we will exhaust our physical strength and energy before we reach the target location. Phew, but for me, the situation is actually no different now. If we don't find a place set up camp, everyone can't hold on any longer." The soldier gasped for air, his chest heaving violently. As for the other guy who was replaced, he was so tired that he didn't even want to say anything. He waved his hands to the two of them and walked towards the off-road vehicle with a dull pace. Collins once again sat in the driver's seat of the still warm reconnaissance vehicle, took a deep breath, held the steering wheel with both hands, and stepped on the accelerator. The two reconnaissance vehicles quickly passed the convoy and returned to the forefront of the formation. But this time, Collins noticed something unusual not long after driving. On the distant horizon, a cone-shaped mountain appeared. Reconnaissance Vehicle Number 2, Collins reported that a cone-shaped mountain was found ahead, about 15 to 20 kilometers away. Collins said into the communicator, "Preliminary judgment is that it may be a volcanic cone." "Copy that, keep moving forward." Sergeant Ken's emotionless voice sounded through the communicator. At this moment, Kaylan suddenly realized that the direction of the convoy was facing the volcano cone on the ground line, and his consciousness suddenly shook. The mission destination of the 776 Special Forces team, could it be this volcanic cone? Collins obviously had the same thought as Kaylan. After a short silence, he turned on the communicator again and asked, "Boss, isn't that our destination?" Sergeant Ken didn't reply. But Kaylan already had the answer in his heart. As the distance between the convoy and the volcano cone gradually shortened, the details of the volcano cone began to become clearer and clearer. Soon, Kaylan and the soldiers of the 776 Special Forces team realized something was wrong. This volcanic cone seems a bit too right. The essence of a volcanic cone is a mountain formed by the accumulation of ejecta from the interior of a volcano near the crater. Generally speaking, volcanic cones whose ejecta is mainly lava are basically conical, because the lava has not completely cooled before it is fluid and can easily form a smooth cone, but no matter how smooth the cone is, it cannot be a completely right cone. The volcanic cone in the distance does not look like a pile of mountains formed by lava eruptions, but more like a huge civilization creation. Could this be the ruins of Engine No. 92? Kaylan was extremely shocked. The volcanic cone, the engine, could the crater on the top of the mountain be the nozzle of the propeller? Such a huge engine, then what could it drive?